From eyebrows that were meant to fade away but are still around 10 years later, to brows that are so misshapen that they're definitely not twins, not sisters, but maybe distant cousins. Today we're diving deep into the world of tattooed eyebrows gone wrong, because unfortunately this happens a lot more than you might think. I recently came across this TikTok user at legit.flawless who is posting her tattooed eyebrows gone wrong as a cautionary tale to warn people against cheaping out on their eyebrow tattoos. So I'm going to refer to her as Flawless. And Flawless is a hairstylist who got a recommendation for a brow artist from one of her clients. And the brow artist ended up coming to Flawless's salon to do a combination of microblading and powder brows on Flawless. And quickly, for people who don't know what those services are, microblading is where the artist takes a thin blade-shaped tool with a row of tiny needles that scratches the surface of your skin to create hair-like strokes along your brows while depositing pigment. Powder brows are when an artist uses a tattoo machine and they whip the pigment into the skin in a tiny dot-like pattern to shade in the brows. Usually the powder brow technique is only done at the tail of the eyebrows, but sometimes people get their whole eyebrows done in the powder method, and it's more of like a makeup-y look, whereas microblading is supposed to be more of a natural look. Some permanent makeup artists, like Flawless's artist, use a combination of this technique in one brow, and these services are usually really expensive. So we're talking anywhere from like $600 to $800 for some of these brows. Now, in Flawless's case, she went with a cheaper route, and this has actually caused a lot more financial strain for her because she's going through with getting these brows removed and potentially redone in the future. She actually said that she now is paying 4 times than what she initially set out to pay with her original brows. And Flawless tried to vet this brow artist by looking through a portfolio of her work. Everything seemed fine, so she went with that brow artist. Now, Flawless believes that the photos she saw was not actually that brow artist's work, but more on that later. Once they were done with the session and Flawless looked at her brows, she said she immediately started crying. And honestly, I would too, because this is the reference photo that Flawless gave the artist. And this is what she got. So this is absolutely nothing like what she wanted. And you can also notice that there's a huge random line under one of Flawless's eyebrows. How did that happen? Like, what is that? According to Flawless, the artist seemingly wiped away the map of these brows when she was tattooing them, and then just decided to freehand this random line that turned out to be way too low and completely uneven to the other brow. So she decided to just leave it there and tell Flawless that it will eventually disappear on its own. Technically speaking, permanent makeup is supposed to fade away within 1 to 3 years. And we're gonna find out later that this is usually not always the case. But this brow artist expected Flawless to just live with this random line for up to 3 years. I really cannot imagine making that huge of a mistake and still feeling good about taking your client's money for this service, but that's apparently what happened. And Flawless does admit that this is a mistake that she made, but she actually paid the brow artist as she was setting up for the appointment. So before they had even started tattooing, the brow artist was paid for the work. And once the appointment was over, Flawless said she was visibly upset, but the brow artist kept reminding her that it's gonna fade away and look perfect, and then just got out of there. So definitely not a good idea to pay for something in advance that you don't know what it's gonna look like on your face yet. Once the brow artist left, Flawless was just left distraught about these eyebrows. And I really get that because your eyebrows change your face so much. And Flawless didn't start with a significant amount of eyebrow at all. So this is a huge change to Flawless's face. So she was calling her friends at a loss of what to do, and eventually she got in contact with someone that does emergency saline removal. So if you don't know what saline removal is, I'll quickly explain that. I feel like I'm like a permanent makeup dictionary in this video, but I have been trained in permanent makeup, so you can trust that I know what I'm talking about. You just can't trust me with your brows because I don't like tattooing brows anymore. And that's because the risks are so high. Things like this happen all the time. Tattooing is stressful enough. Tattooing perfect eyebrows on someone's face is just not for me. Back to saline removal. Saline removal is most commonly used for permanent makeup because the ink is a lot more shallow in the skin, although it can be effective in lightening normal tattoos as well. When we perform saline removal, we are using a tattoo machine and we're tattooing a saline solution into the area that you've been tattooed. This is meant to disrupt and pick up the pigment under the skin, and it can lighten these tattoos significantly. Emergency saline removal is when someone immediately hates what they've had done. They can get this procedure done within a few hours of the initial appointment and up to 48 hours after. And saline removal is not a pretty process. You bleed, you scab, the area is really red, and it usually takes 6 to 8 weeks to heal in between sessions. So when you're healing saline removal on your botched eyebrows, it's gonna look a lot worse for a lot longer before it looks better. So Flawless did get emergency saline removal done, and this is what her brows looked like immediately after that appointment. And I know they look bad, but this is how they're supposed to look. Like I said, it gets a lot worse before it gets better. Now, in one of Flawless's videos talking about this whole mess, people are genuinely shocked about these eyebrows, wondering who did them, how could this have happened, did Flawless get her money back? And this is where things get very complicated, so stick with me. Like I said before, this brow artist was recommended by one of Flawless's hair clients. And these are fake names, but we're referring to the hair client as Megan and the brow artist as Crystal. And Crystal is actually Megan's sister. So when Megan was getting her hair done, Flawless was admiring her eyebrows that were apparently done by Crystal. Megan told Flawless that Crystal is having a sale and that she should let Crystal do her eyebrows. And this is when Megan showed Flawless the photos of the eyebrow work apparently done by Crystal. These were just photos from Megan's phone, like from her camera roll. There was no Instagram account, there was no website, nothing. And Flawless didn't have any information about this brow artist at all. Flawless just saw those images on Megan's phone, and Megan went to set up the appointment to have Crystal come into Flawless's salon to do her eyebrows. At no point did Flawless connect with the brow artist prior to her being in the salon about to do her brows. Flawless admits that this is where she really messed up because she should have gotten an Instagram page or some sort of contact information for the brow artist independently of Megan, but that's not what happened. After this whole debacle with the saline removal and everything, Flawless ended up contacting Megan to ask for Crystal's contact information so that they can just talk through what happened. And Megan was really offended and not helpful. In a text exchange with Flawless, Megan said, "What outcome is it that you are looking for? You are not getting your money back. I'm not giving you my sister's phone number. What is it that you're trying to achieve here?" Flawless responds to this and says, "I don't want my money back at this point. I just don't want her effing up somebody's face more than she has mine." Megan responds to this and says, "Leave me alone. You're not getting anything from me. And if you keep harassing me, I'll go leave reviews for your business. Best wishes, good luck with your eyebrows. Keep harassing me and I'll call the cops." Okay, drama. Clearly this is their fault and they just can't take responsibility for that. And to threaten to leave negative reviews and call the police on Flawless? Crazy. Crazy. Some commenters have also urged Flawless to seek out small claims court against Crystal. But Flawless, first of all, doesn't have any of Crystal's information, and she just wants to move on, not spend any more time or money on Crystal. And on top of that, Megan, Crystal's sister, has disconnected her phone number after this entire incident. Flawless said she just wants to let go of this and let karma handle the rest, which I'm sure it will. If I was that brow artist, the guilt would get to me in a way that I could never do brows again. And I really hope that that brow artist has some sort of conscience about this whole thing. Flawless has been tracking the removal process as she's healing the saline removal, and thankfully these brows have lightened significantly. And this is a great example on how effective emergency saline removal can be. And it just shows how saline removal is a really good alternative to laser tattoo removal. I know a lot of people can be really frightened of laser tattoo removal. It's a scary thing to commit to, and it's incredibly painful. However, laser can be more effective than saline removal, especially if the pigment is a lot deeper in the skin. But with laser, you do have to wait until your brows are completely healed to even go in for your first treatment. So getting saline removal is definitely a good step. You could even get laser later. Kind of depends on how everyone's skin type reacts to these treatments. So that is where Flawless is at now. She's continuing to post updates on how her brows are healing, and she might get them fixed in the future. So if you're interested in following along with Flawless's journey, this is her page. I really admire what she's doing. She's being so vulnerable by sharing this with us all. And we can all learn a lot from Flawless's story. So I want to focus on microblading in particular and some more instances of how these type of tattooed eyebrows can go very wrong. Most people are under the assumption that microblading is a semi-permanent tattoo procedure that lasts anywhere from 1 to 3 years before it fades naturally and disappears. However, this isn't always the case, and it's highly dependent on many factors. 1, the client's skin type, 2, how deeply the pigment is applied, and 3, the pigment itself. Also, all pigment tattooed in your skin spreads over time. This is completely natural. This is just how ink settles into our skin. Depending on the application, the spread can be much more significant or much less significant, but naturally pigment spreads under your skin years down the line. With microblading, when you first get it done, it does look like thin hair-like strokes. But then over time, these strokes blend into each other if they're too close together. And sometimes that creates like a block eyebrow. This TikTok user is a great example of this. So this is at Amy Jo Fit, and she got her eyebrows microbladed in 2020. So that was 4 years ago. If you can believe that the pandemic was 4 years ago. And Amy actually loved her eyebrows when she first got them done in 2020. But now that it's 4 years later, the pigment has spread under her skin, creating that block eyebrow. And this isn't to say that the brow artist did a horrible job and they're bad at what they do. Amy went to a really reputable and well-known brow artist to get this done. I think it says more about the technique of microblading than it does about the artist's ability. And I'll get more into why I just don't recommend anyone get microblading anymore a little later on. Amy is now working on getting her eyebrows removed with laser. I think this is a good idea for people who have had microblading in their skin for over 3 years, because the pigment is clearly pretty deep in there if that's the case. So I think laser is a good option for Amy, and she even said that it was not as bad as she thought it was going to be. And they seem like they're healing up really well. This TikTok creator at Avani went viral back in February when she went and got microblading done, and TikTok was absolutely shocked at the results. So this artist also did a combination of microblading and powder brows on Avani, similar to Flawless from our first story. And first things first, the color. It's just so red and so wrong for Avani. And Avani is definitely shocked when she sees the results, but she's trying to trust the process and let them heal to see how this is gonna really look. But it's kind of clear that Avani's trying to convince herself that it looks okay, because people in the comments were not into these eyebrows. As a permanent makeup artist, my soul has left my body. I was already scared at the mapping. It looks like the old school way. They look like cousins. Oh my god, I would cry. And in a later video, Avani explains that the brow artist actually convinced her to get a combination of microblading and powder brow. But Avani just initially wanted a thick, natural brow with hair-like strokes. But they went with the artist's recommendation. Most people were urging Avani to just wait and see how it heals and then go from there. And it seems like that's what Avani was going to do until day 4 of healing. Avani decides to peel off the scabs of her eyebrow tattoos. Many permanent makeup artists were just outright shocked that Avani did exactly what she was told not to do, and she peeled off the healing scabs of her microblading. My friend Yasa made a video in response to this, and she said she doesn't care how much you hate your eyebrows. If you're peeling off the scabs while they're healing, you're putting yourself at a greater risk of infection, and you're very likely to scar your skin. And scarred skin is incredibly difficult to work with down the line. I think this is also a cautionary tale on just being patient even if you really hate your eyebrows. If Avani did do emergency saline removal before those scabs formed, it would be a completely different story. But since she didn't, the best thing to do would just be to let those heal and then tackle it afterwards. But a lot of commenters saw Avani's initial video of her picking off the scabs and thought, oh, this is actually a good idea because underneath the scabs is just like a faint eyebrow that you can barely see. So people saw this and thought, maybe picking your scab off was a good idea. But it's really not a good idea as the pigment still hasn't healed into your skin and you just can't see it yet underneath those ripped off scabs. And you're potentially scarring your skin for the pigment to then show up later once it's healed. And that's exactly what happened with Avani, because at day 11 of healing, you can see that the pigment came back in that area. And now Avani is actually really lucky because she naturally has really thick and full eyebrows. So now that she's grown her natural eyebrow hair back, you can't see the faded brow at all. So she did get really lucky with this. And I honestly think that Avani's natural eyebrows are so beautiful and they fit her face shape so well. And when I think about it, what Avani initially asked for from the brow artist, she was kind of describing her natural eyebrow. I think it just goes to show you that we can get so in our heads about all of these aesthetic treatments that are popular online. And we convince ourselves that we need these when in reality, we don't. And I really understand, particularly as women, how difficult it can be to love and accept our natural features, especially when every day on social media there's a new beauty trend that will make us look better. So like I said before, I'm at a point where I don't recommend anyone get microblading anymore. And I have a lot of reasons why I say that. First of all, from the perspective of a permanent makeup artist, when you go to take classes to become certified in permanent makeup, usually the first thing you start with is microblading because it's known as one of the easier procedures. And that's because you're not using a tattoo machine, you're using that blade tool. The microblading tool is not difficult to learn how to use. From what I've personally seen, it actually seems like the minority of people experience microblading fading within 1 to 3 years. It seems like most people have this pigment stay in their skin for much longer. And I think that's more to do with the technique of microblading and how it causes a lot of trauma to your skin. Like we saw before, microblading is a bunch of needles that act like a blade to scratch pigment into your skin. And this is clearly causing a lot of trauma to the skin surrounding that area. And I think it's too difficult using this tool to not go too deep. A great alternative to microblading is a newer technique called nano brows. And an artist doing nano brows will use a tattoo machine with a single needle, and they will create really fine hair-like strokes using the needle. And nano takes a much more skilled permanent makeup artist with a lot more training to do these type of brows. And it's significantly less trauma to your skin with the single needle technique. So I think that's definitely the way to go if you want your eyebrows tattooed. But honestly, just tinting your eyebrows is a great solution that is definitely semi-permanent. If I were to ever get my brows tattooed, and I have considered it because I've shaved off the ends of my brows and plucked them to a point where they will not grow back. So it would be nice not to have to draw them on every day. But honestly, I might just go and get them tinted and see how that looks. Because it's such an easier thing to do, and it's not gonna leave permanent marks in your body. But with that, I would love to know what you all think about all of these instances of tattooed eyebrows gone wrong. Do you have your eyebrows tattooed? Do you love them? Do you hate them? Are you getting them removed? Let me know in the comments down below. But if you've made it to the end of this video, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. If you have, leave me this emoji in the comments so I know that you are a real one. Bye everyone.